G'day legends, I hope you're all fantastic. We've got the molecular on the bench today. And I've been playing around with this one, exploring the girth control. And I know a bunch of people are going to ask you, what on earth does the girth control do? I'll rewind to when I commissioned this amp from Nick at Ceriatone. Basically, I said, can you build me a 50-watt Cameron Atomica style amp with a few extra bells and whistles? To which he said, of course. One of the bells, maybe one of the whistles that I wanted added to it was an adjustable negative feedback control, which we ended up deciding girth was a good name for that one. So that's what the girth control is. And I want to show you what it does sonically to the amp. It's going to interact with the power amp section in here. And one way of thinking about what negative feedback does is it kind of controls how stiff or how squidgy the power amp is. Another way to think about it is how non-linear or how linear that power amp section is in there. Essentially, as you turn the negative feedback up, it's going to be a little bit more predictable. Some people will hear that as tighter, some will hear it as stiffer. Use whatever word you want. I really just want to demonstrate what this does. So this amp has a bunch of other functions on it. Essentially, I've got the error switch to the right, which is the lowest volume, most saturated kind of Jose style mod on there. And I've got the bright cap on there to the left, which I just personally prefer. This guitar's in drop D at the moment. It's been moderately psyched. It's got a Gibson Dirty Fingers in the bridge position. You can see I've got the depth control all the way down and girth in the middle. I want you to listen to what happens when I turn it down and then I turn it up from noon. I'm not going to play with any of the other controls on there. So let's try that first. One of the side effects of that negative feedback control is that the volume changes. So it is really hard to kind of pick apart loud sounding more good and loud just feeling different in the room with a difference in tone or a difference in the overall feel of the amp. I do notice when the negative feedback is lower though, that the amp is kind of a little squishier, the transients are different, it makes me want to dig in a little bit harder, whereas turning it up on this amp just makes everything a bit kind of tighter and chunkier. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you some examples where I compensate for the volume. I'm going to do it in post as well. You could turn the master volume control up on here. That might be a more fair comparison. I guess maybe you're kind of sending more signal out to the actual speakers that way. But I figured it might be interesting to just hear these volume match to get rid of that loud is more good factor. What I'm going to do now is let you hear a similar set of clips where I go between having the girth control quite low and the master quite high, and then I compensate for the increased girth by turning the master down. getting into the weeds here, but especially with those single notes on there, they do sound different and they do feel different on there. Now, this girth control, or the negative feedback on there, is also going to interact with the depth control on the amp. And again, I'll give you another example where I have the girth control quite low, and I'm going to bring the depth control up to around 11 o'clock and back. Then I'll do the same thing with the girth control up around noon. I will bring the master volume back to compensate for the volume difference, and I will do my best to normalize these in post, again, to get rid of that loud is more good factor. That was super interesting on there. You could see with the girth at its minimum value on there, as soon as I brought the depth control up from its minimum value, the amp just kind of like bloated out, and then it got a lot louder. Whereas having that girth control already incorporated in the circuit and then bringing the depth up, the overall volume didn't change anywhere near as much, which really did change the feel and the sound of the amp in there. So having a bit of that girth control on there and bringing in the depth control is pretty important on this particular amp. Now, not a lot of amps offer an adjustable negative feedback control. One that does come to mind is the Headfirst Alta. I'm sure Jason at Headfirst could give a much better explanation of the power of negative feedback over on his channel. It's well worth subscribing to, and we've got a Gear podcast episode with Jason that was amazing fun. He goes all right for a Kiwi as well. Anyway, that is all for today. Kind of made this video mostly for my own reference so I can remember how the depth and girth controls interact on this particular amp. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll put a link to the Ceriatone website. And look, I've spoken to Nick quite a bit over email, and they're based in Malaysia, and he was kind of saying the way you pronounce that is it's like a chur kind of sound, which I'm not very good at. So it's not Ceriatone, it's not Ceriatone. There is that kind of Ceriatone in there. So I'm not even saying it right. So who am I to sit here and judge? But I know people are going to complain about the pronunciation in there. And you know what? It's totally fine. It's like playing guitar, isn't it? A lot of it is about interpretation. Nevertheless, Nick is a legend. Who else did I mention? Jace at Headfirst, similar amount of legend. All of you, massive legends. Thanks for your support. Have a great day. And here is some King's X.